24. An-Nur, the light. This chapter was revealed in Medina after the campaign of Banu Mustalaq in the 5th year of Hijrah. The central theme is social manners, modesty, and the penalty for adultery and slandering innocent people. The aim is to lay down firm foundations for building relationships between men and women based on modesty and respect. It opens with declaring a severe penalty for adultery and continues by recommending rules for the mixing of men and women, the hijab, and personal privacy inside and outside the home. The purpose of these rules is to develop a decent environment, free of sexual exploitation. If sexuality is not properly controlled, it can cause disorder in family life and chaos in wider society. These simple rules are powerful preventative measures that restrict shameful behavior. Ignoring these rules leads to the spread of all kinds of sexual exploitation, indecency, pornography, and prostitution. The story of the false accusation against Aisha, the mother of the believers, highlights the importance of these social regulations. The story concludes by declaring the innocence of the mother of the believers and recommends 6 effective social rules. We are warned against spreading rumors. Penalty for those who spread indecency. Develop the value of forgiveness. Permission should be sought to enter houses. Women covering themselves in public. And assistance for single people to marry. The parable of light in verse 35 points to God's creative power, making living matter from the darkness of nothing. Evidence of the existence of God, the light, is God's guidance, the ability to discern right from wrong, the marvelous phenomena in the physical world, rain, rainbows, and earthquakes, fill us with awe that leads to belief in Him. But the disbelievers are deprived of this light. Verse 40. This spiritual passage comes in the middle of a legal discussion, and the point is that religious laws are only meaningful if God remains in the center. The next passage stresses the power of the Almighty and why we need to observe His rules. Devout believers are promised He will make the believers and the righteous His deputies on earth, as He made those before you His deputies. Verse 55. 4 more social manners are pronounced: visiting others, concessions in wearing the hijab for mature women, eating together in the company of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran's position on slavery. Since slavery was deep-rooted in the 7th century, the Quran didn't attempt banning it in one big swoop. It would have been impossible to give it up. Instead, it adopted a gradual tactic. First, ensuring slaves have rights. Owners were obliged to feed, clothe, and allow them freedom to worship. Secondly, those who freed slaves are praised. It prohibited making Muslims slaves. Thirdly, certain atonements could be achieved by freeing slaves, all of which encouraged and improved the status of slaves. Moreover, the Quranic subtext of kindness, generosity, and justice required its followers to see slavery as incompatible with Quranic justice, since it violated the concept of human brotherhood and sisterhood. If any of your slaves asks for an emancipation contract and you see some good in them, draft it for them and give them of the wealth that God has given you. Verse 33. In the name of God, the kind, the caring. This is a chapter that we sent down with laws to be obeyed, and we revealed clear verses so you will pay attention. Flog the fornicators, male and female, each of them 100 lashes, and don't let sympathy for them hold you back from fulfilling God's orders. If you believe in God in the last day, and let a group of believers witness their punishment, a male fornicator only marries a female fornicator or an idolatress. A female fornicator only marries a male fornicator or an idolater. And fornication is forbidden for the believers. Those who accuse chaste women of fornication but fail to produce 4 witnesses should be flogged 80 lashes and never accept their witness statement again. They are major sinners, except those who later repent and reform themselves. God is forgiving, kind. Anyone who accuses his wife but has no witnesses other than himself, let him swear 4 times by God he is telling the truth. And the 5th time he says, God's curse be upon him if he is lying. Punishment will be averted from her if she also swears by God 4 times that he is lying. And the 5th time that God's wrath be upon her if he is telling the truth. Imagine the consequences. If it were not for God's grace towards you and his kindness, God is relenting, wise. Those who planned the slander were a handful of you. Don't consider it bad for you. In fact, it's good for you. Each person among them will bear the consequence of his part in the sin, and the one who played the leading role will receive a mighty punishment. If once they heard it, the believers, male and female, of their own accord, should have thought the best of themselves and said, "This is clearly a slander." If they had produced 4 witnesses, it would be different, but they failed to produce the witnesses. In God's sight, they are liars. Were it not for God's grace towards you and his kind treatment in this world and the hereafter, then a mighty punishment would have affected you all because of the rumor you rushed to spread. You gave it publicly with your chatter and said things with your mouths you had no knowledge of, thinking it was trivial. But in the sight of God, it was serious. If only when you heard it, you had said, "It is not fitting for us to talk about this. Glory be to him." This is a terrible slander. God warns you, never repeat such behavior again if you are believers. God is explaining the verses for you. God is knowing, wise. Those who like to spread indecency among the believers will suffer a painful punishment in this worldly life and the hereafter. God knows what you don't know. Imagine the consequences. If it were not for God's grace towards you and his kindness, God is compassionate, kind. Believers, don't follow in Satan's footsteps. Whoever follows Satan's footsteps will find that he urges indecency and shameful acts. If it weren't for God's grace on you and his kindness, none of you would be pure. God purifies anyone he pleases. God is the hearer, the knower. Those of you who possess status and means shouldn't vow to stop giving to relatives, the needy, and those who emigrated for the sake of God. Let them pardon and overlook their shortcomings. Wouldn't you like God to forgive you? God is forgiving, kind. Those who falsely accuse careless but nonetheless chaste, believing women shall be cursed here and the hereafter, and will be severely punished. On the day, tongues, hands, and feet will testify against them for what they did. That day, God will settle their account for them in full, and they will know God alone is the truth, the clarifier. Vile women are fit for vile men, and vile men are fit for vile women. And likewise, moral women are for moral men, and moral men are for moral women. Such people are innocent of what others say about them. They will be forgiven and have generous provision. Believers, don't enter any houses other than your own homes until you have made yourselves known and greeted the occupants. That's best for you, so you may pay heed. If there is no one in, then don't enter until permission is given. And if you are told go back, then go back. That is the best course of action for you. God knows well what you do. You can enter without permission a non-residential place that provides you amenities. God knows well what you reveal and what you conceal. Tell believing men to lower their gaze and be modest. That is the best for them. God is aware of what they do. And tell believing women to lower their gaze and be modest. They shouldn't expose their beauty in public, except what is normally showing, and cover their bosoms with headscarves. They should only display beauty to their husbands, fathers, fathers-in-law, sons, stepsons, brothers' sons, sisters' sons, female servants, slaves, any male attendants who are free of sexual desire, and children who are indifferent to the sight of women's private parts. And they shouldn't stamp their feet to draw attention to the beauty which they hide beneath their clothes. Believers, turn to God, all of you, so you may be successful here and the hereafter. Help the unmarried people amongst you to marry, and your righteous male servants and maids, even if they are poor. God will make them self-sufficient through his grace. God is vast, all-knowing. And let those who lack the means to marry keep themselves chaste until God makes them self-sufficient through his grace. If any of your slaves asks for an emancipation contract and you see some good in them, draft it for them and give them of the wealth that God has given you. For your cravings to make worldly gains, do not force your maidservants into promiscuity if they wish to remain chaste, merely because you desire what this worldly life has to offer. Whoever forces them into it, then God will be forgiving, kind to those maidservants after being coerced to perform sexual intercourse. We send down to you clarifying verses and an example of those who passed away before you, as well as teachings for those who are mindful of God. God is the light of the heavens and the earth. An example of his light is a niche in which there's a lamp, the lamp glowing in a glass, the glass bright like a brilliant shining star fueled from a blessed olive tree, neither of the east nor of the west. Its oil shines even though untouched by any flame, light upon light. God guides whomever he pleases towards his light. God gives people examples and has full knowledge of all things. Such lamps are to be found in houses that God has permitted to be erected and in which his name is mentioned, and where, glorifying him morning and evening, are men who are not distracted by buying and selling from God's remembrance, performing the prayer and paying zakat. They dread a day when hearts and eyes will be wandering, hoping God will reward them according to the best they did and give them more from his grace. God provides without limit for whomever he pleases. However, the disbelievers' deeds are like a mirage in a desert. The thirsty traveler imagines it to be water until he reaches it, only to find nothing there, but finds God before him, settling his account in full. God is swift in calculating accounts, or their deeds are like veils of darkness in the deep sea, covered by wave upon wave over which clouds loom. The layers of darkness lie so densely over one another that if one takes one's hand out, one can barely see it. Anyone God deprives of light will have no light at all. Haven't you considered everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies God? The birds flying in flocks, each one knows how it should pray and glorify him. And God knows what they do. God controls the heavens and the earth, and to him is the final return. Haven't you considered how God moves the clouds along, joins them together, then piles them up until you see rain pouring from them? On mountains, He sends down from the sky hailstones that strike whomever he wills and spare whomever he wills, and the flash of its lightning nearly takes away one's sight. God causes the succession of night and day. In that are lessons for people of insight. Moreover, God created every creature from water. Some crawl on their bellies, others walk on 2 feet or on 4. God creates whatever he wills. God has power over all things. We revealed verses that clearly explain, and by them God guides anyone who wants to be guided towards a straight path. People will say, we believe in God and in the messenger, and we obey, but afterwards a group of them turns away. Such people are not believers. When they are summoned to God and his messenger for judgment, a group of them objects. Had the decision been in their favor, they would have submitted willingly. Is there sickness in their hearts? Or do they have doubts? Or are they afraid that God and his messenger will deal with them unjustly? Such people are sinners. The believer's response when they are summoned to God and his messenger for judgment is, we hear and obey. These are the successful. Whoever obeys God and his messenger and fears God and is mindful of him, these are the victorious. Hypocrites swear by God, using their strongest oaths that if you were to command them, they would march out to battle. Say, don't swear. Obedience is recognizable. God is aware of your works. Say, obey God and obey the messenger. Then if you choose to turn away, he will answer only for what he has taken on, and you will answer for what you have taken on. If you obey him, you will be guided. The responsibility of the messenger is to convey the message clearly. God has promised to make the believers and the righteous his deputies on earth, as he made those before you his deputies. And he will make their religion strong, which pleases him, and he will remove their fear and make them feel safe, since they worship me alone and don't associate any partners with me. The disbelievers are the evildoers, so perform the prayer, pay zakat, and obey the messenger in order to be treated kindly. Never think the disbelievers can defeat God's plan on earth. The fire is their place of refuge. What a wretched home. Believers, your slaves and children who haven't yet reached puberty should ask permission before entering your room 3 times of the day, before the dawn prayer, at midday when you get undressed, and after the evening prayer, 3 times of your privacy. Outside these times, there is no blame on you or them to wander in and out of each other's rooms. That is how God makes his verses clear for you. God is knowing, wise. When your children reach puberty, they must ask permission, like those mentioned before. That is how God makes his verses clear for you. God is knowing, wise. Older women who have no desire to marry may remove their outer garments as long as they don't display any beauty. There's no blame on them. However, even for them, it's better to remain modest. God is hearing, knowing. There is no restriction on the blind, the disabled, the sick, or yourselves, eating in your own homes, or your father's homes, your mother's homes, your brothers, sisters, paternal or maternal uncles, and aunts' homes, or homes whose keys you hold, or at your friends' homes. It isn't blameworthy whether you eat together or separately. Whenever you enter houses, greet each other with a sincere blessing from God. That is how God makes his verses clear for you, so you may reflect. The believers firmly believe in God and his messenger, and when they are with him discussing any matter of general concern, don't leave without seeking his permission. Those who seek your permission are true believers in God and his messenger. If they ask your permission to attend to some private matter of theirs, give them permission as you wish, and seek God's forgiveness for them. God is forgiving, kind. Do not call out in a loud voice to the messenger as you would call out to each other. God knows those of you who quietly slip away to avoid being given a task. Those who disagree with his commandment should beware in case they find themselves tested or are struck by a painful punishment. Doesn't everything in the heavens and the earth belong to God? He knows exactly where you stand, and on the day all are returned to him, he will inform them of what they did. God has full knowledge of all things.